not hidden. There's never been a moment you were forgotten. You are not hopeless. Though you have been broken, your innocence stolen. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. There is no distance that cannot be covered over and over. You're not defenseless. I'll be your shelter, I'll be your armor. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear your SOS, your SOS. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true, I will rescue you. I hear you whisper underneath your breath. I hear you whisper you have nothing left. I will send out an army to find you in the middle of the darkest night. It's true, I will rescue you. I will never stop marching to reach you in the middle of the hardest fight. It's true, I will rescue you. I will rescue you.
Hey everyone, my name's Alex, and thank you for joining us today for online worship. If you're brand new to St. Peter's, we'd love to get to know you, connect with you, or even just pray with you. If you're watching our interactive stream this morning, just go up to the top of your screen and click on the I'm New button. Or if you're watching this at a later date, you can go to stpetersedina.org and click on the Connect with Us under the Community tab. Let us know how we can serve you, pray with you, get you connected, or even just say hi if you'd like. We would love to meet you. This morning, we continue to make our way through our Bible Gems to Remember book. We encourage you to follow along with us as we read about the story of Joseph this morning. We'll see that Joseph had many ups and downs in his life. He was thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, even thrown into prison. And then eventually he became a leader in Egypt. We'll see that God was with Joseph through all of it and never left his side. To find out more, you can read this story starting on page 68 in your illustrated Bible. At St. Peter's, we're all about meeting families at the intersection of faith and real life. We want to meet families where they are and help them discover the love of Jesus. If you'd like to help support our mission, you can do so by visiting our website and clicking on the Give button, texting any dollar amount to 84321, or by mailing a check directly to St. Peter's. We appreciate everyone who has given, and we look forward to continuing to serve you and your family. Thank you again for joining us today, and don't forget to say hi in the chat window, as we would love to know you are here with us today. With that, let's jump into our service with our kids' message.
stories of the Bible. Joseph and his coat. So this is Joseph.
Hey!
You see, Joseph was the son of Israel and Rachel. Israel loved Joseph more than all 12 of his sons. In fact, he made Joseph a coat to show him how much he loved him. When Joseph's brothers saw this, they hated Joseph. One night, Joseph had a dream. When he awoke, Joseph told the dream to his brothers. He said, "Listen to this dream I had. We were gathering grain when suddenly my bundle of grain rose up and all of you bowed to me." This made his brothers hate Joseph even more. And they said, "You're gonna rule over us?" Then Joseph had another dream. And he told it to his brothers and his father. He said, "Listen, I had another dream. And this time the sun and moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." This time Israel heard the dream and rebuked Joseph, saying, "Will your mother and brothers and I actually come and bow down before you?" The brothers were even more angry when they heard the second dream. Israel, however, decided to think about what Joseph was saying. One day, Joseph's brothers were working when they saw Joseph coming to meet them. One of his brothers mocked him and said, "Here comes the dreamer. Come on now, let's kill him and throw him away to be devoured by a ferocious animal. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." One of the brothers named Reuben wanted to rescue Joseph, so he said, "Let us not take his life. Instead, throw him in the pit."
Yeah!
So when Joseph came to his brothers,
Hey!
they attacked him. They took the robe their father had given Joseph. They hoisted Joseph up and threw him into the well. Then they saw a group of men from Midian coming towards them. Judah thought it would be a good idea to sell Joseph to these men. So the brothers sold Joseph to the merchants for 20 shekels. The brothers then took the coat of many colors back to their father and made him believe that Joseph had been killed. Israel wept for his son whom he loved. Meanwhile, Joseph was taken as a slave to Egypt to work in the house of a man named Potiphar, for Joseph's story was only just beginning.
Ever been there? At the bottom? Some are thrown in, some slip in. It really doesn't matter how you get there. It's just the realization of where you are. The pit. It's a little cool and dark. It's humid, it's dirty, it's uncomfortable. You don't want to stay there long, that's for sure. No one wants to stay in a pit. There are two big questions that you have to deal with when you find yourself there. One's more important than the other. One's helpful, the other just beats you up and leaves you even more miserable. Here they are. The questions you ask from the bottom of a pit. Number one, how did you get there? And number two, how do you get out? In Genesis 37, we pick up with the story of a pit, where we see a deeply loved son, Joseph, has been thrown. His father, Jacob, now called Israel, finally was blessed when he and Rachel, the wife he deeply loved, finally brought a child into the world. And you can catch up with that story by viewing last week's message. I think it's fair to say that Joseph, the baby, was born into a dysfunctional family. By baby, he's the youngest. There are 12 brothers, one father, 4 mothers, one daughter. Not what you would call a home filled with marital bliss. It was filled with jealousy, strife, bitterness, competition, deceit, secrecy. Add in a difficult father-in-law, and then the challenge of a cross-country relocation. And well, this is not a harmonious, loving, godly family that we find in the Bible by any stretch. Now, Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. See what I mean about dysfunctional? They hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. And then there was the robe that became a symbol of Jacob, his father's favoritism toward Joseph, and it aggravated the already strained relations between Joseph and his brothers. I read that this robe was more than a simple gift from a loving father. It was a long-sleeved garment worn by nobility in the day. That's who wore long sleeves. So it was a symbol of authority and favored position within the family. So it was Dad saying, "Hey, my youngest son is like a king in this family." And the rest of the brothers jealously hated Joseph for it. Then Joseph had a dream that he was all too happy to report to his brothers. His brothers said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he said. "I dreamed I was the greatest. I was king," he told his brothers, "and you all bowed down to me." Joseph's obviously dealing with a little bit of immaturity. He's 17 years old, and he's kind of boastful about the whole thing. And then he has a second dream. This time, even his parents would bow down to him. Now, maybe the brothers had evil intent, or maybe they just wanted to help avoid further family conflict, but they took action. Joseph was sent by his father to go find his brothers who were grazing the huge flock of sheep. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them near Dothan, but they saw him in the distance. And before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life," he said. "Don't shed any blood. Throw him into this cistern here in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." Reuben said this to rescue him from them and take him back to his father. So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him into the cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. Joseph went after his brothers. Joseph now's in a pit. How did he get there? Was it Joseph's fault? Did his father cause this by avoiding dealing with all the problems that eventually exploded? Was it a bad attitude that had just multiplied among all the brothers? Was it a mob mentality when they were all together? Regardless, his own family had thrown him into a pit to die. And then they sat down to dinner. A boy in a pit. Should we blame jealousy? Jealousy has a blinding effect. The reason that it's so hard to recognize is because our reasons for it seem to make sense. But left unchecked, jealousy grows quickly and leads to serious sin. And that's what we find. My Bible note reads, "The longer you cultivate jealous feelings, the harder it is to uproot them. The time to deal with jealousy is when you notice yourself keeping score of what others have." Maybe your pit isn't like a cistern. By the way, for the city folks among us, a cistern is a large pit that's used to catch and store rainwater during the rainy season. So it's just a deep hole in the ground, a pit. I wonder, what are some other pits that people fall into? A financial pit is when you lose everything. Maybe it's caused by a risky business investment or a collapse in the market or just financial ruin brought on by too much spending where you can no longer pay all your debts. Maybe business just dried up during the pandemic. Some find themselves in a pit when they lose their job. That makes them rethink everything about their life and their purpose. And unable to pay their bills, they get eviction or foreclosure notices. Many found themselves bankrupt and homeless. Others literally hit bottom with a thud. It might be an addiction. Everything's out of control. They're trying their best to escape and avoid reality, but they find themselves in a deep, dark pit. More than a few find themselves in a pit because of the collapse of relationships, marriages, families. Some blame their way into the pit. They're the victims. Everything always happens to them, and they've convinced themselves that others and life itself is unfair. Someone else is always at fault. They claim to have been picked on since childhood. Medical reports will push a person into a health pit. Fear is another reason people find themselves in a pit. Avoiding life, avoiding others, avoiding danger. Loneliness, out of touch with family and friends, all alone with your thoughts day and night. Hopelessness, depression, anger, an emotional pit, a spiritual pit. Maybe the pit you find yourself in is different. It's unique. Here's what I know. You don't climb out of a pit. Somebody has to rescue you. The Bible has many examples of pits. Noah in the ark, Daniel in the lion's den, Paul in a horrible shipwreck, John in prison because he wouldn't stop preaching the gospel. David had just gone through an emotional quake. He was still feeling all kinds of aftershocks. And in Psalm 40, he was remembering life at the bottom, life in the pit. Now, David had a choice: sink into despair or flee to the Lord, to find that the Lord was his refuge. And that's the same choice each of us has every day of our lives. David chose to flee to God for refuge. And recalling the depth of his pit, David wrote Psalm 40. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock, and he gave me a firm place to stand. David shared a pathway out for others who find themselves hitting the bottom in life. Please, listen. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, who does not look to the proud, to those who turn aside to false gods. Many, Lord my God, are the wonders you have done, the things you plan for us. None can compare with you. Were I to speak and tell of your deeds, they would be too many to declare. Now, if you feel like you're in a pit, relax. You're not the first person to find yourself looking up from what feels like a deep, dark hole. But there will be reason for rejoicing, for telling of how God rescued you. Remember Joseph? That pit looked like a dark, dead end, but it was honestly just a tunnel to the palace. He was sold as a slave, and in Egypt, God was with him and helped him do a good job. Joseph's master was so pleased that he put Joseph in charge of his whole house. Then another pit. He rejected this master's wife and was unfairly thrown into another pit, prison. He'd done nothing wrong, but God was with him. Our Bible gem today, God will be with you. It's a promise that is repeated several times. In Genesis chapter 39, but while Joseph was there in the prison, the Lord was with him. He showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison warden. So the warden put Joseph in charge of all those held in the prison, and he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. And then God did something amazing. Remember Joseph's dream? Joseph was given the opportunity to tell the meaning of the Pharaoh of Egypt's dream. The king saw that Joseph was wise, so he put him in charge of everything to help Egypt get ready for a famine. God will be with you. What a gem. God will be with you. Jesus is God incarnate. That simply means that Jesus has come to the earth to rescue us. He came, he showed up. And here's the best part. Since he's with us, Jesus jumps into the pit with you. The sinless one enters into your sinful pit and says to you, I'll stay here and deal with the consequences. You get out. No matter how deep your pit, how hopeless your reality seems, realize that Christ will be with you. A man had a son who was in a pit, it seemed. He was possessed by an evil spirit that had robbed him of speech. And he foamed at the mouth, and he gnashed his teeth, and he had seizures. And no one was able to do anything to bring relief to this boy. So they brought him to Jesus. And after Jesus asked the boy's father how long he'd been like that, he was told, since childhood. At that, Jesus commanded the spirit to come out. And the spirit did come out. But now the boy looked like a corpse. And Mark tells us in his gospel that Jesus took him by the hand and lifted him to his feet. Oh, by the way, I don't want to leave you concerned about how you can get out of your pit. And I want to assure you that the internet helped solve the problem of the pit. Really. A realist said, that's a pit. An idealist said, the world shouldn't have pits. An optimist said, things could be worse. A pessimist said, things will be worse. But Jesus, seeing the man in the pit, took him by the hand and lifted him to his feet. And Jesus loves you too, even when you feel like you're in a pit. Well, what about the end of our story from the Illustrated Bible? What a life Joseph had. First, he was a favorite son, then he was a slave, then a prisoner, then a powerful ruler. Some times were good and some were bad. But God was with Joseph through it all. And God will be with you. Our biblical blessing comes from Joshua chapter 1. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go.